Alright y'all, welcome back to the channel and to some more buckshot testing, and today we've got a combination that a lot of you guys really wanted to see last week when we tested these shells, and it's one that I also am looking forward to seeing how it does, because we saw some pretty decent performance for a start out of these shells. But if there's a choke that might give us the best possible pattern out of these, it might just be this one. So we're just going to have to test it and see what we can actually get out of this combo. And as for the shell we've got out here today, I brought out some more of the Federal copper-plated buckshot rounds. These ones are the 12 gauge, 2 3/4 inch, 9 pellet load of double-aught buck, moving about 1,325 feet per second. And for being a relatively standard-ish buckshot shell, these did give us a really nice pattern last time we tested them. They were just a little bit larger than the flight control patterns, but definitely a lot better than a lot of the other pretty normal loads of buckshot that we've tested as well. So with these not being a flight control load, how are they going to do through today's setup? I don't know. It's definitely going to be interesting to see what happens. But as for that setup we've got here today, I brought out the Remington 1187 with this choke, which is the Kicks Buck Kicker full choke. It comes out to be right at a 693 constriction, so right in your typical full choke range. But this Buck Kicker has shown us some very nice improvements over our standard stock chokes as for our patterns when we've tested it so far. But the last time we ran some Federal buckshot through it, we tested the flight control shells, and they did some really weird things, probably due to the porting here. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what this choke can do with the standard copper plated loads. I think we're going to see a pretty good pattern, but we just don't know if it's going to do anything weird or not until we test it. But as for the test today, everything is set up the same as usual. I've got the big sheet of paper set up at 40 yards. I've got the chronograph so we can get our velocity out of the shell, and I've got some templates that we can lay up over our target for the better reference point as to how they would have done in some more real life type of scenarios. So enough talking, let's get you guys a view of this target and take this shot and see just what kind of a pattern this buck kicker can give us with these Federal copper plated double-aught buck shells here today. Okay, so that shell gave us 1,310 feet per second through the chrono, and that's definitely within reason considering the box claim is 1,325. So I think our velocity looks pretty good up here, considering we're only 15 feet per second under their claim out of that 28-inch barrel. So I'd say we're looking fine up here, but what kind of a pattern did it actually give us down there at 40 yards? Let's go check it out and see what we got. Alright, so now we're down here at our 40-yard paper, and this is what we got. And I gotta say right off the bat, it really kind of looks like a copy and paste of the last time we tested these through the stock full choke out of that 1187. We really didn't seem to gain much out of them. I did measure this overall group here, and the farthest 2 points across are from that bottom right pellet all the way over there to that far top left pellet, and that gave us 17 inches at 40 yards. I want to say the stock full choke was like 16 and a half or 16 3/4. So really 16 to 17 inches, that's not really an improvement, which I don't know. That just might be as good as we're going to get out of these shells. Now they're still not flight control levels, you know, that 12 to 14 inch range here at 40 yards, but that 16 to 17 inch range is still plenty good enough for deer hunting or anything like that. And it's definitely quite a bit better than a lot of the other standard buckshot shells out there on the market. I mean, for example, the Federal Power Shock shells, which are a little bit cheaper than these, I think they gave us a 20-inch spread or a 22-inch spread or something out of this buck kicker. So they are a little better than that, but we still see a little bit of stringiness in here as well. As you can see, we have a line over on the bottom right, and we have a diagonal line across the middle with one pellet up there at the top. So although these copper-plated Federal shells have given us a decent overall size pattern, they have been a little bit stringy. So we might just have to find the right choke to keep the same size overall group, but maybe even it out a little bit. Either way, let's throw a couple templates up here and see what it actually would have looked like if you would have taken this shot out in the field. Okay, and here's our 10-inch circle, and if we line it up with the actual core area of the pattern, as you can see, we have one pellet definitely within there, and we have another that's kind of halfway in down at the bottom right, and another that's just barely touching the edge of the circle over on the left. So I'm calling it like 1.5 pellets. If you want to call it 2 or 3, then I guess you could as well. But that's kind of another reason why I would like to see a little bit more of an even spread rather than strings, because with strings, you get voids throughout the middle of your pattern. So definitely not perfect as for a core area, but let's throw the deer template up here and see what it would have looked like if you would have taken this shot in a hunting scenario. Okay, and here's the deer template, and if we line it up with where our point of aim would have been, as you can see, we do have all 9 pellets that would have hit this deer, and we have plenty of them through the vitals area there. Several of them through the lungs. We got one up in the spine for sure, one right through the front shoulder area, and a couple more right in front of the heart where all those big arteries and stuff come off of there and run up the neck. So yeah, that would have absolutely been a dead deer, that's for sure. And once again, this pretty much looks like a copy and paste of the last pattern we saw out of the factory full choke. So I'm still saying it's not a perfect pattern, but clearly it is plenty good enough to take out deer hunting to 40 to 50 yards or so all day long. But let's throw the hog template up here real quick just to take a look and see what that says. I think it's going to be the same story, but we'll put it up there anyway real quick just to take a glance at it. Okay, and here's that hog template, and like I suspected, it's pretty much the same story. We have all 9 of them within there, so yeah, that hog is absolutely going down. So it looks like this combo, if that's what you wanted to or had to run with, if you were going on a deer hog hunt, you would be just fine at 40 yards, and you could probably take it to 50 and still be okay. I wish these were a little bit more of an even spread and a little bit less stringy, but I don't know. Maybe we run them through something like a modified choke, and that might help a little bit. Because the stock full and this buck kicker definitely look pretty much the same, to be honest. So I don't know. You guys can let me know what you think about it. But at the end of the day here, it is plenty usable enough. Not quite as good as the flight control shells, considering they are pretty much the same price per box in most case scenarios. I would probably still lean flight control personally, but these are a solid option as well, it would seem. Okay, and here's the wad out of that shell, and as you can see, it is kind of like the little Federal Shorty shell wads. Definitely a lot shorter than your standard full-length 2 3/4 or 3-inch wad would be, but I think it controls them enough to give us a pretty decent pattern. And these are not just a plated shell. As you can see, there is a little bit of buffer material down there as well, which I definitely think helps our pattern. With them being buffered, plated, and having a wad, I think that's why we see a little bit better patterns than the average buckshot shell. Now, that kicks choke having porting did catch the end of the wad just a little bit here, but that's not uncommon at all for ported chokes like that and kicks chokes in general. So the wad looks very much like how I would expect it to look. Definitely nothing too fancy to take note of, and I think it did about as good as what it could have done with today's setup. Alright y'all, well, what did you think about that pattern right there? It's definitely not terrible whatsoever. It is a plenty usable enough solid hunting pattern out to 50 yards or so. That's going to do just fine on any kind of deer or hogs or anything like that you would ever need it for. Are they as good as the flight control shells? I don't think they're quite that level just yet, but they're not terribly far off either. Now, considering that they are pretty much the same price per box at that $12 to $16-ish range, depending on where you get them from, I would probably lean towards flight control and just stick with a stock full choke in that gun, because that is a fantastic performance setup. But if this is what I had or what I could find, it's absolutely more than usable as well. I wish it was a little bit less stringy and a little more even, but maybe we need to try a couple other chokes and we might be able to even that out a little bit. But as always, let me know your thoughts down below. Is that about what you expected to see? Were you a little surprised one way or the other? Have you tested these copper plated 9 pellet double-aught shells? And if so, what kind of results have you seen? Would you hunt with that kind of a pattern? Or do you want to see a little bit less stringiness and a little more evenness? And is there another choke that you might want to see those shells run through? Let me know all that down below. But with that being said, I've got some more testing to get done for you guys, so I'm going to get back to it. As always, we have the channel Instagram as well as the mailbox where you can send stuff if you'd like. All that information will be in the description if you're interested in it, but I'm going to get back to it, so I'll see y'all in the next one.